My wife drugged me with sedatives so she could sleep with my best friend while I mourned our stillborn daughter. Then she wore my watch, used my cologne, and drank from my world's best dad mug. I pretended to heal, gathered evidence, then live-streamed her confession to the people she most feared. You never expect your world to fall apart in a hospital room, but that's where mine crumbled, in that sterile, too bright space where I held my daughter's lifeless body. She never got a name. Grace had picked one, but we never said it aloud after that day. My name's Adam. I'm 32 years old, living in Asheville, North Carolina. Or I guess I was. I don't really live anywhere now, not in the way people mean. I exist. That's about it. After the stillbirth, something inside me just shut down. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I'd sit in our daughter's unfinished nursery for hours, staring at the crib we'd never get to use. Grace stopped going in there after the first week. I didn't blame her. I was starting to scare myself too. Grace and I grieved in opposite directions. I wanted to talk about it, obsessively. She wanted silence. I cried. She cleaned. We kept missing each other completely. That's when Lucas showed up. Lucas had been my best friend since college. We met during our sophomore year at UNC Charlotte. He was the kind of guy who always had a story, always made things lighter. At least, that's how I remembered him. When he called and said he was taking some time off work and wanted to come help, I didn't think twice. Grace welcomed him with open arms. I was too hollow to notice how quickly they fell into step with each other. At first, I was grateful. Lucas cooked. He cleaned. He took Grace grocery shopping and made sure I was eating. I kept telling myself, this is what friends do. He's helping. But there were things, little things, that didn't sit right. One night, about 3 weeks after he moved in, I walked into the kitchen for some water. It was late. Lucas and Grace were sitting on the couch, laughing at something on his phone. When they noticed me, they stopped abruptly. Grace straightened up. Lucas turned the screen away. Couldn't sleep? Grace asked, brushing a hand through her hair. Yeah, I said slowly. Just thirsty. Lucas stood, already walking toward the fridge. Let me grab you a water, man. The moment was small, barely anything, but it stuck with me. Over the next few days, I kept catching them in those quiet moments, a smile too long, a shared joke I wasn't part of, a silence that fell when I entered a room. One time I came downstairs and found them whispering in the laundry room. Grace claimed they were looking for a missing sock. I told myself it was grief, that I was seeing patterns that didn't exist, that paranoia was part of the process. And maybe it was. Maybe I was broken. But somewhere deep in my gut, I felt something else, like a thread was being pulled when I wasn't supposed to see. I shook it off. I told myself I had to get better. I had to trust them, but something had shifted. And once you start doubting what you see, it's hard to unsee it. Lucas moved in officially the following week. Grace said it was just for a while, a couple weeks max, just until he gets back on his feet, she added. Stirring a pot of soup like this was the most natural thing in the world. He has his own place, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. In Charlotte, she shrugged. He said his lease ended. And anyway, it's good having someone else around. You're not exactly present. That stung. But she wasn't wrong. Lucas made himself at home fast. He took the guest room but spent most of his time in the common areas. He done while he cooked, rearranged the pantry for efficiency, even started doing our laundry, folding Grace's sweaters like he'd done it before. Like he'd always done it. The first thing I noticed was the coffee mug. My mug. It was a chip black thing I'd had since college. A stupid thrift store find, but I drank from it every morning for years. It had this faded text. I paused for coffee. Nobody else ever used it. Not even Grace. One morning, I came downstairs and found Lucas at the kitchen counter, sipping from it like it belonged to him. I paused. He looked up and grinned. This mug's hilarious, man. Can't believe you still have it. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Yeah, old habit. He didn't offer to give it back. Then came the aftershave. It was subtle citrus and cedar, something I bought Grace last Christmas as a joke. You always say I smell like a mechanic, I'd said. Now you can smell like me. She'd laughed, sprayed it once, and never touched it again. But now I smelled it every time she passed me in the hallway. It could have been coincidence. Maybe she rediscovered it. Maybe Lucas had the same scent. But that didn't explain the whispers. The way they leaned in too close on the couch. The way they laughed, loud and deep, then got quiet when I entered the room. One night, I stood in the hallway just outside the living room. They didn't know I was there. She's asleep, Lucas asked. Finally, Grace whispered. He's barely even here. Lucas, you see it, right? Lucas didn't answer right away. I heard the rustle of fabric, maybe shifting on the couch. I see it. I stepped away before I could hear more. I didn't want to know what came next. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed beside Grace, staring at the ceiling, her breathing steady, like she didn't just casually erase me from my own house, my own life. I didn't say anything. I didn't accuse. I just watched, quietly. And from that point on, I started paying attention, like really paying attention. I began tracking their behavior, not overtly, not with anger, just noting patterns, times, places, what they wore, what they said, when the doors were closed and when the lights were off. Because if I was going to lose everything, my wife, my home, my sanity, I needed to know if it was real, or if grief was still playing tricks on me. I installed the cameras the next morning, tiny black domes, tucked high into the corners of the living room and kitchen. I told Grace they were for security. We'd had a break-in down the block last month, and I played the concerned homeowner bit like I meant it. She didn't ask questions. Lucas barely looked up from his phone when I explained it. Smart, he muttered, sipping coffee from my damn mug. At night, after they went to sleep, or thought I had, I'd go into the garage, pull up the footage on my laptop, and scrub through it, minute by minute. At first, it was nothing, just conversation, quiet meals, a shared blanket while watching a movie. But then it started changing. I watched Grace make tea while Lucas rubbed her shoulders, his thumbs working slow circles through the back of her sweater. I watched him brush her hair from her face and lean in close, too close, whispering something that made her laugh and tilt her head toward him. I watched them on the couch, legs pressed together, her head falling softly onto his shoulder as he scrolled through his phone with one hand, his other hand tracing light lines across her thigh. I kept waiting for her to pull away, to get up, to say something. She never did. And then came the night I wish I hadn't seen. It was around 1:30 in the morning. Grace had told me she was going to bed early, said the migraine was back. Lucas stayed downstairs, watching something on TV. I waited in our room, listening to the creaks of the old floorboards until everything went still. Then I crept down to the garage and pulled up the feed. There they were, Grace in a robe, Lucas shirtless, barefoot, standing by the kitchen sink. They whispered, smiling, and she touched his arm, then his chest. He leaned in, and they kissed. Not a peck, not some confused, grief-driven moment of weakness. It was deliberate, slow, familiar. I didn't pause the video. I just sat there, watching the screen in silence, my hands frozen over the keyboard, my heart pounding so loud it made my chest ache. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just stared, like my brain couldn't fully process what my eyes already knew. After a few minutes, they parted. She touched his cheek, said something I couldn't hear. He nodded. Then she went upstairs, back to her bedroom, back to me. That was when I knew. It hadn't started after we lost the baby. It had started before. I needed proof, not for them, for me. I waited until they left the house the next afternoon to run errands. Then I went into the office, opened Grace's laptop, and typed her usual password, the same one she used for everything, our anniversary date. It worked. I started with her text messages. The desktop app synced automatically. There were dozens of threads with Lucas, some flirtatious, others worse. Do you think he suspects anything? Not yet. He barely even talks anymore. God, you're the only person I can breathe around. Sometimes I feel like he's more dead than the baby. I stopped reading after that. I clicked through to her email and found more private threads. A few messages with a friend of hers, one Grace had always said she barely talked to. He's spiraling again. Thank God Lucas is here. You know you can't keep playing both sides forever. I'm not. I'm just waiting until he levels out a bit. Then we'll figure it out. She wasn't planning to leave me. She was planning to wait until I couldn't fight back. One more thing. One last thread. An online order confirmation. Some wellness website. A shipment of supplements addressed to me. A bottle I hadn't remembered ordering. My name. My email. Her credit card. I scrolled down. High-dose melatonin. Herbal sleep aids. Mood stabilizers. I clicked to the tracking history. She'd ordered them twice. The same week she started insisting I try to relax more. My hands trembled as I shut the laptop. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a setup. And now, I had the evidence to prove it. I stared at the half-empty bottle of supplements in the medicine cabinet. Grace had been so casual about it the first time, handed me 2 pills with water and said, "They'll help you sleep." Her tone was warm, encouraging, like she was doing me a favor. Now, I knew better. I emptied the pills into a small plastic bag, sealed it, and placed it inside a manila envelope. The next day, I mailed it to a lab I found online that took anonymous samples. I used a fake name and paid extra for expedited results. While I waited, I put on a show. I shaved, showered every morning, made breakfast. I even sat through a few movies with them, nodding and pretending to laugh at the right times. When Grace touched my hand, I didn't flinch. When Lucas clapped me on the back and said, "You're looking better, man," I smiled and thanked him. I played the role of a man healing. They believed it. One night, I mentioned taking a trip to visit my brother in Raleigh. "He's been worried," I said. "Wants to see me in person." Grace looked up from the dinner table, her face carefully neutral. "That sounds good. I think a little time away could really help." Lucas didn't look up from his plate. "Yeah, recharge and all that." I packed a bag, made a whole production of checking the oil in my car, left out a printed itinerary on the kitchen counter. I told them I'd leave early the next morning. I never left. Instead, that night, I slipped back inside through the garage, climbed into the attic above the guest room, and waited. I'd set up an extra camera in the hallway earlier that day, hidden behind a wall vent. Another in the guest room, under the corner shelf. My laptop streamed it live to my phone. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Just before midnight, I watched Grace come out of our bedroom in a nightgown. Lucas emerged from his room a minute later, wearing sweatpants and nothing else. They whispered in the hallway, then slipped into the guest room together. The door closed. I stared at the screen, heart thudding. No more doubts. No more wondering. I stayed hidden until morning. Then I slipped out again, made noise at the front door like I had just come home, called out, "Hey, I'm back," as if nothing had happened. Grace greeted me in the kitchen, her hair damp, her face fresh. She kissed my cheek. "Did you end up leaving something behind?" she asked, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Yeah," I said evenly. "Just had to grab it." Lucas walked in, scratching the back of his neck. "Long drive for a forgotten item." I shrugged. "It happens." Later that day, I went out again for real this time. Not to Raleigh, just a nearby hotel. I needed to breathe, to think, to rewatch the footage a dozen times in privacy. They thought they had fooled me, that I was too broken to see what was right in front of me. But now, I wasn't just watching. I was planning. I hadn't spoken to Marcy in years. Last I heard, she'd moved out west after things with Lucas went south. But I still had her number saved from way back, buried in a group chat that hadn't been active since 2018. I didn't expect her to answer, but she did on the second ring. Hello, Marcy? It's Adam. Adam Ridley. Silence for a beat. Then, wow. Hi. This is unexpected. Yeah, I know. I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't important. It's about Lucas. She let out a short, bitter laugh. That name should come with a warning label. I explained as simply as I could that Lucas had moved in with us after the stillbirth, that he'd been helping Grace, that lately, things didn't feel right. Marcy didn't hesitate. He's doing it again, she said, like it was a foregone conclusion. I should have warned you years ago. We talked for over an hour. She told me everything. How she and Lucas had been engaged once. How he had charmed her family, her coworkers, even her best friend, the same best friend he later slept with. She found messages, photos, voice memos that made her sick. But the worst part, she said quietly, he never apologized. Not once. He acted like it was inevitable, like I should have expected it. She sent me screenshots from old emails and chats, the same tone I'd seen in the messages between him and Grace. Slightly mocking, always 2 steps ahead, always rewriting reality to make himself the victim. Then she dropped the real bomb. After me, he got involved with a woman who was married, convinced her he was the only one who really saw her, destroyed her marriage, and then disappeared. Do you have her name? I asked. Not anymore. She blocked me after I tried to warn her, but I've kept everything else. If you need it, I'll testify. I'll go on the record. Something in my chest shifted. I had felt alone for weeks, like I was the crazy one, the broken one who saw shadows where there were none. But now I wasn't the only one. There's more, she added. I checked something after we hung up last night. Lucas and Grace followed each other on Instagram 2 years ago. That's before you even announced the pregnancy. My stomach dropped. You're sure? 100%. I remember because he bragged about her, said something about how beautiful she was, how you didn't deserve her. I thought he was just being petty. 2 years. That meant the messages, the whispers, they weren't some spontaneous affair sparked by tragedy. They'd been circling each other for a long time, and I had been the perfect idiot standing in the middle. I thanked Marcy, promised to keep her updated. Before we hung up, she said, whatever you're planning, be smart. Lucas is slippery. He'll spin it if you let him. I looked at the camera feed still running on my laptop. I won't let him. 3 days later, the lab report arrived. It came in a plain manila envelope addressed to the fake name I'd used, Matthew Grant. Inside was a 4-page document filled with medical jargon, chemical breakdowns, and a clear conclusion at the top of page 3. Contains high concentrations of synthetic melatonin, valerian root extract, and diphenhydramine. Prolonged use in combination with prescription antidepressants may cause impaired cognition, hormonal imbalance, and reproductive suppression. My hands were cold as I read it. There was a red flag box underneath, not recommended for individuals with a history of depression. Potential psychological dulling and fertility suppression noted in 32% of lab subjects. They hadn't just been trying to sedate me. They were trying to erase me. I made 6 copies. One went into a locked box in my office. One into a fireproof safe in the garage. One I sent to my college roommate, Brad, a lawyer who owed me more favors than I could count. One to a cloud drive under a disguised folder. And the rest I stashed in a sealed envelope in the back of the guest bedroom closet, behind the insulation panel Lucas had installed himself when he helped with repairs. Grace thought I was broken. Lucas thought I was passive. They were both wrong. That night, I installed one last camera, tucked inside a vent in the ceiling of our bedroom, small, silent, infrared. I needed everything this time. Audio, movement, detail. Then I made the call. Grace's parents lived 40 minutes away in Boone, retired, polite, and always a little wary of me. But they loved Grace, and they adored the idea of playing saviors. Brunch, I said over the phone. I know it's short notice, but I'm finally feeling up to seeing people again. Oh, honey, of course, her mother gushed. I'll make lemon scones. Grace always loved those. I was thinking this Sunday, 9 a.m. sharp. Kind of a surprise. Grace doesn't know yet. Her mother hesitated, then said warmly, we'll be there. Perfect. Back at the house, I was all smiles. I told Grace I wanted to cook breakfast for her and Lucas Sunday morning as a thank you. She beamed. That's the first time you've offered to cook since. Everything. Just trying to move forward, I said, keeping my voice light. Saturday night, I let Grace hand me 2 pills. I palmed them, pretending to swallow, then flushed them in the upstairs bathroom. I spent the rest of the night in the garage, curled up on the futon I kept there, phone in hand, live feed streaming. At 2:12 a.m., they entered the bedroom together. Lucas pulled his shirt off as Grace laughed, whispering something I couldn't hear. She was wearing one of my old shirts. They slid under the covers like it was theirs. The sight didn't hurt anymore. It disgusted me. By morning, I was back in the house, in the kitchen, frying bacon, setting the table, playing the part of the grateful husband. Grace walked in around 8, hair damp, skin flushed, smiling like she didn't have betrayal clinging to her skin. Lucas followed 10 minutes later, barefoot, wearing boxers and one of my t-shirts. Smells amazing, he said. stretching like he'd just had the best sleep of his life. "Thought you guys deserved it," I said, flipping a pancake. At 9:01 a.m., the doorbell rang. Grace's parents stood there, smiling. She turned, startled. "What are they doing here?" I just smiled. "Surprise. Surprise," I repeated, stepping back from the door. Grace froze. Her smile twitched, then vanished entirely as her parents swept in with a bottle of orange juice and a tray of mini muffins. "Adam," her mom chirped, "you look wonderful." "Oh, look at this spread." Lucas emerged from the hallway behind us, still barefoot, hair wild, wearing my old shirt like it belonged to him. He stopped in the doorway, expression twisting as he spotted Grace's parents. Hey," he muttered. Her dad's eyes narrowed. "Lucas." Grace laughed, high and too fast. "Oh, he stayed over last night. We were just watching movies." He crashed on the couch. Lucas didn't correct her, just nodded stiffly and backed into the kitchen. I took my time pouring the orange juice, letting the tension grow. Then I said, calmly, "Actually, he didn't sleep on the couch." Grace blinked. "What?" I looked directly at her parents. "He slept in our bedroom, with Grace." Silence fell so hard it could have shattered glass. "Adam, what are you talking about?" Grace's voice trembled. I pulled the remote from the counter drawer and pressed play. The living room TV came to life, screen filled with black and white night vision footage. The guest room, Lucas and Grace kissing, then Grace slipping into my room, then both of them in bed, together. Her mother gasped, hand covering her mouth. Her father's face went rigid. Grace stepped forward, reaching for the remote. "Turn it off." "Adam, what is this? What the hell is wrong with you?" "Wrong with me?" I said, grabbing a folder from the table. "Let's talk about that." I opened it, pulling out copies of the lab report. "This is a full toxicology analysis of the pills you gave me. You know, the ones you said would help me relax. Turns out, they're laced with high-dose sedatives. The kind that mess with your mind, your body, your fertility." Grace went pale. "You're lying." "I had them tested, sent to 2 different labs. The bottle was ordered under your account, shipped here, with your name on the payment receipt." She shook her head slowly, like if she kept denying it, it would go away. Lucas tried to speak. "Look, man," I cut him off. "And the texts? The ones between you two, mocking me, planning this months before we lost our baby." Her parents both turned sharply to Grace. "You planned this?" Her father said quietly. "No, Dad." Her voice cracked. "Don't lie again," I said. I opened my laptop, showing them the messages, the emails, the flirtation that began while we were still preparing a nursery. Grace lunged, tried to shut the screen, but I pulled it away. "I also have a statement from Lucas's ex Marcy. You remember her, right? She offered to testify about his pattern, seducing, manipulating, destroying." Lucas stepped back, hands up. "Okay, you've made your point. I'll leave." Grace turned toward him, desperate. "Lucas." He didn't wait. He grabbed his shoes and darted for the door, face flushed. "Coward." Her mother stared at Grace like she didn't recognize her. "I can't believe this," she whispered. "Mom, I didn't mean." Her father cut her off. "Don't." He turned to me. "We had no idea, Adam." I nodded. "I know." Grace tried one last time. "You don't understand. This wasn't about hate. I was hurting. We were both hurting. You used my grief as cover," I said flatly. "You didn't just cheat on me. You tried to erase me." She reached for me. I stepped back. "Don't." And then, for the first time since the stillbirth, I felt something real. Not grief, not anger, control. The truth was out, and she couldn't run from it anymore. Grace's parents left without saying goodbye to her. Her mother avoided eye contact on the way out, clutching her purse like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her dad didn't say a word, just nodded at me and followed his wife out the door. Grace stood in the living room, arms crossed tightly over her chest, lips trembling. I didn't say anything. I just picked up the dishes from the table and started rinsing them in the sink. "Adam," she started. I didn't turn around. "We're done talking." She moved closer. "I know I messed up, but you ambushed me. In front of my parents? You think that was fair?" I turned off the faucet, dried my hands slowly. "Was it fair when you slept next to me for weeks pretending to care? When you drugged me so I'd stop asking questions?" She didn't answer, just stood there, breathing heavy, like she wanted to cry but couldn't quite make herself do it. I walked past her and dropped a large envelope on the kitchen island. Inside were 2 documents, a legal notice of separation and a restraining order request, already signed and dated. I had mailed copies to my lawyer the night before. "You'll be served officially within 48 hours, I said. "I suggest you leave before then." She stared at the envelope like it was some foreign object. "You're really doing this?" I already did. Later that night, Lucas tried to call, for times. Then he texted, "Man, I didn't know things were that serious between you two. She told me you were basically over." I screwed up. "Let's talk, please." I blocked his number. The next day, the story started spreading. Marcy posted a thread on her social media, vague at first, then specific. Screenshots, dates, voice memos. When manipulative men play grieving best friends, women get hurt. Let me tell you about Lucas. People shared it. A few women chimed in. Some had known him. Some had been through something similar. Grace tried to stay quiet, but then her former coworkers began commenting on old posts, adding their own experiences. A friend of hers posted, "Funny how the people who preach loyalty are the first to weaponize trauma when it benefits them." She deleted her Instagram by the weekend. Meanwhile, I was reclaiming my space. I took down every photo of her, boxed up our wedding albums, got rid of the baby clothes, not in anger, but because it hurt too much to look at them. I donated everything to a shelter out in Winston-Salem that helps struggling parents. The house felt emptier, but for the first time in months, I could breathe. I stopped taking the pills, started jogging again. I left the cameras up, not because I was paranoid, but because I wanted to remember what it felt like to protect myself. People started reaching out, not to pry, but to support. Quiet, honest messages. Saw what happened. Glad you stood up for yourself. Been there, man. Stay strong. Grace had always said I was too passive, that I let life happen to me. She was wrong. I just needed the right reason to stop letting people walk through my heart like it was a hallway. And now, finally, I'd locked the door. It started on a Tuesday. Someone sent me a link. Grace had made a new account on a different platform. One of those authentic living blogs where everything's in lowercase and pain is poetic. The post was long, teary, carefully curated. She wrote about our stillbirth, about my emotional neglect, about how grief tore us apart and pushed her into the arms of someone who simply saw her. She didn't name Lucas, but she called him her accidental salvation, said she made mistakes, but that she was vilified for trying to feel alive again. It got shared a few hundred times. Some comments were sympathetic. Others called her brave. I felt sick. 2 days later, Lucas posted his version. He took a different route, one of those self-pitying half-apologies. He admitted to poor judgment and being emotionally vulnerable around a friend's wife, but claimed Grace manipulated him, not the other way around. She told me Adam was shutting her out. I believed her. I didn't know the full truth. I'm not perfect, but I didn't deserve to be ambushed. I didn't respond, but I didn't have to. Brad, my lawyer friend, called me the same afternoon. Just a heads up, he said. You've got a defamation suit coming your way. They're rattling sabers, trying to claim you doctored evidence. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. They're panicking, Brad added. Good. Let them. That night, I got a call from Marcy. Remember that private investigator I mentioned? She said. Well, I sent him digging. The guy had been thorough. Not just Lucas, but Grace, too. He found that Grace had pulled similar stunts in the past. 2 previous partners. One filed a police report after she attempted to get him fired using fabricated screenshots. Another moved across the country and changed his number. Worse, the PI discovered Grace had faked a psychiatric clearance letter to get hired at a mental health nonprofit 2 years ago. Forged signatures. A completely fake therapist. Would this hold up? I asked Marcy. Oh, it'll hold. He's submitting the report to the licensing board and her former employer as we speak. Suddenly, Grace's victim narrative began to unravel. A few people started questioning the holes in her blog post. Someone dug up photos from weeks before the affair was exposed. Her and Lucas at a spa together, smiling. Another person screenshotted one of Lucas's old comments on Grace's photo from the pregnancy announcement. You deserve the world. You better know that. Someone replied underneath. You were already circling. It wasn't a tidal wave, but it was enough. Their version of the story couldn't gain traction anymore. Too many cracks. Too many receipts. I stayed quiet, focused on my job, my routines, my breathing. Let them spin their narratives into the wind. Because when your truth is real, cold, ugly, documented, you don't have to shout. You just have to wait. Eventually, liars bury themselves.